For those of you who don't know me, my name is John Lane. And I'm a child of God. I am. Now, when I record this, it is currently, believe the clock just struck midnight. And it's a Friday night, and yet here I am. Here I am praising the Lord. Here I am about to give my testimony. For I know the Bible says that the Lord inhabits those who praise him. So I'm here to praise him, and I'll tell you for a fact, the body is tired. But as I stand here before you right now, I stand here because, this is a cause for celebration. The Spirit is alive and well within me. I am awakened. I can stand here right now and testify that after 23 years of life on this earth, I finally know God. For so long, I thought I knew God. Just a little side note. I've been praying on this message that I was going to give you for most of this week. Ever since about Monday, I've been praying. Since Sunday, actually, or even before that, I've been praying. I've been praying on this message, and it's been a really busy week for me, and I didn't even think I'd get to this tonight. But I had a circumstance because one of my passions is stand-up comedy, as some of you know, and I thought I was going to do an open mic tonight, but literally last minute, I found out that I wasn't going to be doing the open mic, and I don't know if I would have thought this before, but now I think that this is a sign from God that it's time that I record this. It's time that I get it out. I'm going to be ruffling through papers here this evening because there's so much that I want to get to, and I've just been praying. I'm just, I'm so overjoyed as we'll get there. There's there's a lot on my mind right now. So my story is not much different than most of y'all. It really isn't unusual. So I was baptized in Des Moines, Iowa, in 1999. Baptized Presbyterian. Then my family moved to Central Illinois, and we went to an Episcopal church for about a couple years, and then we found our home in a Lutheran church. And growing up, I would be involved in church camps. I would go to this thing in high school called Leadership Lab. Leadership Lab was a thing held at Augustana, held at Augustana University in the Quad Cities of Illinois, and this was probably the first time that I actually felt like I could see God. And it was the kind of thing where I remember going up there with some people from my church who were a little older than me, who I looked up to, and they'd been going for a couple years, and I remember them talking to me about how Leadership Lab had transformed their life and had helped them to deepen their faith, and that one time, and that my first year that I went, they had told me that I was just like, I feel like I'm feeling God. I feel like I'm seeing God work. And they were telling me, you just wait until you've done it for a few years. I've seen God work within my life every year that I've been here. I've seen God. And I was so inspired by that. And so that was one of the first times that I ever felt like I never felt like I could know God. And I went on to sincerely believe that during during those weeks in my during those weeks in my journey through Leadership Lab, every year, 1 week in July, throughout high school, I would feel God, and I would be convinced, like, man, I'm seeing God. I feel Him. I feel His presence. There's something greater than me out there. And I remember one point, my pastor was one of the people who would lead Leadership Lab, and so he went up one time, and I don't remember the full story of it, but he gave me, like in front of everybody, this was like our celebration, our contemporary worship service, like during one of his sermons, he made a point to discuss what I had done for the community. And if I remember right, I think it's because I had made a mental health video when I was about 15 or 16. And I can actually link that in I feel like a real YouTuber. I can link that in the bio below. Everyone be sure to like and subscribe. And so I remember going up there, and I didn't know God. Looking back, I didn't know God, but I could see God working within me. Looking back, I can see God working within me, and that was truly just an amazing moment. I remember getting, this, like, we did like a standing O. So I don't know if you guys ever, that was like a church camp thing or something. We'd do like, standing O. And so for a day, I was wearing a cape on my back because to an extent, I was a hero in my faith, and they wanted me to be recognized. And looking back, that's a really especially as we get more into my story, that meant a lot to me, that I could be recognized in front of people I looked up to, but I felt so, I'm just so humbled looking back that, I can do anything on this earth in a way that can proclaim, that can praise our God in that way, and that I was, that I could be praised in that moment for my work in my faith, and for what I'd done for other people who've been going through stuff, and that, what I'd done and what I was doing in the community. And also in high school, I was involved in Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I don't know how many people are familiar with Fellowship of Christian Athletes, but I was actually going through my Athletes Bible the other night, and for the first time since high school, since I was in Fellowship of Christian Athletes, this type of thing, you get up really early in the morning, and you'd have like donuts and coffee, and then you'd go over the Bible. So it was like my first true like young adult Bible study. And I've always felt like moved to like bring this with me to places, but I've, as someone who's a transfer student, as someone who's been to different places, I've always felt the need, I've always felt moved to bring this with me. And it's the front page is signed by the coach who led our FCA meetings, and it just says, "John, stay true to your faith and do great things." And this was another moment of my journey that of a journey of a time when I thought I knew God. And also during this time, I was a regular acolyte in my church. And it's something I'd actually forgotten about until earlier this week. But because it's been a few years, but I was an acolyte, and I would take it very seriously. It was really important to me, and so I would pray before I go up and when I'd leave, and um, it was probably one of my first times when I realized what it was like to serve God in some type of ministry. Even just as a high schooler who's an acolyte, like for me that was like, wow, here's a way I can truly praise God. And after that, I went to a Lutheran college, because my faith was important to me. And at this Lutheran college, I quickly found myself, going to chapel. I was going to the weekly Wednesday night service. I was, I was listening to the messages, and I would go on to go to Bible studies, and I would even go on to lead a Greek life Bible study my junior year of college. To co-lead it with someone, and it was, and looking back, as serious as I took leading the Bible study, that was a time when, again, I thought I knew God. And I feel like thinking you know God is something that can come in a variety of ways. It can be something where, to an extent, you see and you hear, and I would hear stories of all these people who would tell their God stories, their encounters with faith, the times that they've seen God work within their lives, and I would want that. I'd want that for myself. And then there's also the just genuinely thinking you know God. But as we go on in my story, we'll find out I didn't know God. I'm reminded of a time in my college journey. This was at Valparaiso University. Shout out to my people at Valpo who are watching. I love you guys. You guys were instrumental in my faith journey. I remember someone from my Bible study told me at one point that her and her friend had been talking, and that they think I could be a minister. That they think that they could see me as a pastor. And that was such a moving thing, and like a surprising thing. It's like, me? And I thought about it, because, and they say this because they're like, you make good points during Bible study. And I was like, me? So, someone as broken as me could be a minister for God. And it got to the point that I was talking to my pastor growing up, and I talked to him on the phone for like an hour, and I was just asking him questions about seminary, and I was taking it very seriously. And I had a fraternity brother who had, piping it up. I was in a fraternity, which is why I was leading a Greek life Bible study. So, and I had a fraternity brother who graduated like a year before, who was in seminary at the time, and so I had to talk to him. This was a part of my journey where, if you were to ask me, John, do you believe in God, or if you were to ask me, do you know God? I would say yes. I'm a Christian. I would say I'm a Christian. and that would be a good enough answer in my eyes at that time. And it's around this time that I went through some serious mental health struggles. And I specifically remember, I remember one night I was going to work on my passion. I was going to do an open mic for stand-up comedy, and the past couple of days I had seriously been showing some depression symptoms, and I'd even earlier that day went into the University Counseling Center at the recommendation of a fraternity brother and a good friend of mine. And yet, I had no idea what that night would have in store for me. So as I'm going to this open mic, I'm hoping, and I want to say that I was praying, but I don't know. I was hoping that open mic would give me what I needed, would give me the fulfillment, would fix all of the mental health related things I was going through, all of the life moments that had hit me. I was hoping that at that time that would fulfill me, and it didn't. And this is kind of a this is not kind of, this is an emotional thing for me because next week is next week is the anniversary, is the three next week is the anniversary, the 3-year anniversary of the night that I almost did the stupidest thing I've ever done on this earth. That's the night that I almost killed myself. But I didn't, and I went on to write about this in my in an article, and I can also link that in the bio. But there was this moment where people were asking me in the fraternity house, John, are you okay? And I don't know if you've ever seen the episode of Friends where Ross is like, I'm fine. This was me in this moment. I was like, I'm fine, everything's fine. And it wasn't, but God placed some angels in the form of my fraternity brothers that night. My fraternity brothers all gathered in my room, and several of them, all people who I was super close with in the fraternity, and people who I wasn't super close with, or who were a couple years older than me. They all gathered for me in that moment, and I'll never forget that. But so this was April 9th, but April 10th is one of the most important dates in my life, because not only is it the date that I came clean to my fraternity brothers, to my friends on social media, that I've been going through some serious depression, and that I needed help, and that I was truly broken at that time. But that's also the time that I came clean to my Lord. That's the time that I realized that even though God is all-knowing and all-powerful, that I had managed to keep this away from my Lord, my time of deepest struggle, of deepest pain, up until any point in my life, that I kept this from my Lord, and yet I called myself a Christian. And I remember that it was during this time that one day in Bible study, a good friend of mine who was leading another Bible study came to this Bible study, and he didn't usually go, but he did, and he made quite the impact on me that night. There was a question raised in the Bible study: when you think of someone who's strong in their faith, who is it? And the answer that he gave was, "Oh, John Lane." And this was this time. And I had a hard time wrapping my mind around that. Because this time it made me feel like I had been an actor in my faith. And that I'd been an actor, that I was strong in my faith, and that and yet, man, I had managed to keep this away. My deepest struggle, I had managed to keep away from my Lord, and I called myself a Christian. I remember also that next day, April 10th. I remember the fraternity brothers and I would sometimes go to Celebrate, which is the contemporary worship service that we would go to at the chapel on Wednesday nights. And so we went together. And I was broken at this time. I was really broken. I mean, it hadn't even been 24 hours. And when we got in the chapel, it was all dark. There was no light. It didn't look like the typical Celebrate. Because it wasn't. There were little pamphlets on the seats in the chapel. And for a thing called Celebrate, I didn't feel like there was anything to celebrate, really, that night. And yet, God was there for me that night. It was dark because the message that God had decided for me to hear that night was that of what it's like to go through depression. Of that is what it's like to feel alone in your struggle, and to feel that, and those thoughts that you would have, that we would all have when we go through these struggles. We think God is not here for us. And that was that message, that God is there for us. And I got really emotional. And as you can tell, I've got no problem being vulnerable, and this is because of this time. I'm comfortable being vulnerable because I realized what I was doing at the time was not working. And because it was not working, I realized that something had to be done, and that I had to change this, and so that's when I started not only coming clean to my friends, but to my God. And I remember that night during Celebrate, everybody, we would go downstairs, and there was this place where people would kneel around candles and pray, and I would always pray because I always wanted to know God. I really did. And this night, man, I must have been down there for 15 minutes, man. I was letting my heart out to God because I'd realized how much I'd tried to keep away from God. And then I realized that I couldn't do that anymore. And at this time, for the last couple of years, because I wanted to know God. I would meet with my university pastor and Pastor Jim, and because I wanted to know God. And I'll never forget this. I'll never forget in April when I went into his office and I told him this. I told him why I felt like I needed to meet with him because of what I was going through. And again, I could tell that God sent me an angel in that moment. And I remember telling him how much, and he could tell me, wow, that Celebrate service was just what you needed. Isn't it amazing how God gives you the message you need when you most need it? And this didn't solve my depression. Depression is something that it's human, and we all go through it. But this was a pivotal time in my faith. This was a moment looking back, a moment I haven't thought of in a few years, where now as these messages are getting clearer, again, as I testify, because man, I'm going to give you a spoiler. If you haven't noticed yet, this is a testimony because I found God. And looking back, this moment was pivotal for me in my faith journey. Another moment that I didn't really realize was a part of my faith journey was a few months later, because some of you know I'm at the University of Minnesota now, and I've been talking an awful lot about Valparaiso University. So how did I get here? How did I get to this part? And to that I would say, because of my passion for stand-up comedy, I was feeling awful unfulfilled. I was feeling like I love to death, and I still do, my fraternity brothers. But I felt like there was more for me out there, and I wanted to chase my passion. But even more so, I felt something deep within that said I needed to take a risk. And now, as I look back, I know that risk is God, and that feeling I felt is God. And it took a lot of consideration, even some prayer. But God led me here, and I'm so grateful He did. So let's flash forward to now, to the last couple of months, to the most pivotal time in my faith, to a time so pivotal that it extends past my life on this earth into eternity. I had this really good friend. His name is Sal Espino, and I say is because I want his memory to continue to be a blessing. And we worked together really closely on a political campaign in the summer of 2020. And we got promoted together that summer. We lived together for 2 months. And there was nobody I talked to more that summer. Well, February 15th, I just gotten home from an open mic, and I wanted to post something because I had good news to share about my personal life and comedy. And I wanted to share that. And as I opened Facebook for the first time all day, I see a picture of my friend. I see a picture of Sal Spino, and it's Sal Spino Jr. And this picture is one that I see circulated a couple times, and I read the post and I see my friend passed away. He tragically passed away at the age of 31. And I can't help but think that I can't help but think that week before, after a couple months, we'd finally gotten back into contact. And that one of the last message he sent me was his new phone number, because he told me he had a new phone. And the last message I sent him was asking if we could catch up soon. And well, he never had a chance to open or read that message. And I know some of you know how devastating this feeling is, but I had no experience with this feeling. This was the first time that I'd ever lost a friend. I've lost all my grandparents, and I've lost a lot of important family members in my life, but I never lost a friend. And so in this moment, I didn't know. It kind of sounds weird. Like I didn't even know like how to cry in that moment. I couldn't even process it. When your friend passes away, who you just talked to a week ago, who you were just now getting back in touch with. How can you? How can you process that? And it was so hard on me that I had to fall on my knees to God. I had to pray to God, man. And let me tell you, I stormed the heavens for my friend Sal that week. I really did. And that week, I was scheduled to go to a conference for the university ministry that I had joined that past year. And man, I know this video is long, man, but I pray to God that you guys are watching this, man, because you guys are so pivotal in my testimony. So I went to this thing called SALT Conference through that ministry, and I got involved in this ministry at the beginning of that school year, man, and it wasn't just a life changing, man. It was it's eternity changing for me. And I remember as I was talking to people that next night at SALT at our service, you know, we were talking about how much I needed this, how much I needed this time with the Lord to praise the Lord, man. And I couldn't even comprehend what that meant at the time, but I was like, yes, because I know I need something, and I know that this something has to be greater than me. This something isn't going to come from me. I need a miracle. And that week, continue to process, or try to process, what had happened. And Friday night, I get word of the funeral arrangements. And I feel called to go to the funeral. And so I'm praying an awful lot. I'm praying an awful lot more than I ever. I'm praying. I'm praying. I'm just. And I'm on my knees and I'm praying because I want to go. I feel called to go. But the funeral's going to be in Texas. That's where Sal's family's from. And I'm a college student and I didn't think I could afford it. And because I didn't think that I could afford it, man, as we're at that first session, I was just texting my mom like I want to go, and you know, I feel called to go, but I just don't know if I don't know how I feel comfortable if I feel like I can afford that, if but I really want to go. And so I kept praying, and I kept praying. And I praise the Lord that weekend. All right, brothers and sisters, I praise the Lord that weekend. I praised and I prayed. I think those are synonymous. And that next night, that next night, we were looking for parking at the conference. My friend, my good friend Jared and I were looking for parking at the conference, and we're going through the parking ramp, and Jared stops the car, and he says, "John, I want you to see something. I don't want this to make you sad, but I feel like you need to see this." And he puts the car in reverse. To my right, there's a car, and the back windshield has written on it, "Sal," with a cross next to it. This was at a time when I was really praying to God. And over my life, I've struggled with my confidence with prayer. I really have, man. I've prayed socially, but there are so many times when I've forgotten to pray. And yet in that moment, man, I was overwhelmed with emotion. And a friend in the back seat told me, "Wow, what do you think of that? Isn't it crazy how God sends us messages?" And He does. He does send us messages. So I'm trying to process that, and we head into the evening session of the conference. And we're praising, man, and I'm so overcome by emotion because of what had just happened. Because I just seen God. And I remember one point in the night I heard my phone buzz. And when I heard my phone buzz, I didn't necessarily know what it was at first, but I knew I was going to wait until the evening got done. We got done praising. And I looked at my phone, and what I saw was an unprompted message from my mom that said my family was going to help financially support me so that I could go say goodbye to my friend. Man, and I saw God that night. And this was a pivotal night in my faith journey. And even though there were some weather complications, man, the funeral was rescheduled, but by the grace of God, I got to go to the funeral of my friend Sal in Texas. And I had a really good faith discussion with a friend there, and I remember one point. So we're at an Airbnb, and at this point I'd been driven there by a friend. I didn't know the address of the house. And I asked for the address of the house, and the street name was Salvador Lane. Salvador Espino John Lane. Man, and I felt like God was there for me in that moment. I'm sorry for how long this is going, man. This has been a lot for me to take in, man, but I've felt the presence of God in my life. And that next week, I was scheduled to go on a Salt spring break trip with that Salt ministry, man. And we were heading, funny enough, back. We were heading, funny enough, back down to Texas. And I felt something brewing within me, something that was so much greater than simply I could ever offer. And throughout that week, we had different people on the service trip who were asked to give testimonies. And it got me wondering, what's my testimony? So it got to the point where I was like, man, I need to talk to somebody about this. So I reached out to one of the people who helps lead the Salt ministry through our campus, Colin. And I was like, hey, man, can we meet sometime? And flash forward a week later, I'm back from spring break, man, and we're trying to find a time to meet. And it's a struggle. It was not easy for us to find a time to meet. And so I find myself needing to pray to God again. And so I prayed on this verse that I'd heard. And so I listen to this every night. Since early 2019. I've listened to this YouTube video with a guy named Wayne Dyer, and in that he discusses before you go to bed, and in that he discusses this Bible verse. But I've never really prayed on this Bible verse. And so as Colin and I are struggling to find time to meet, I pray on this Bible verse. The Bible verse is Job 33, verses 15 and 16. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falls upon men, while slumbering on their beds, then he opens the ears of men and seals their instruction. So I prayed on that verse, that in that night, God would help me find a time to meet with Colin, because I felt like I really needed this in my walk. And in that night, God gave me the answer. In that night, we scheduled something for Wednesday morning, and when I woke up, I didn't tell Colin about this, but we scheduled something, and it was like, I can do Wednesday morning. So in the dream, God had helped my anxiety, man. And I've struggled with anxiety a lot, man. I've struggled throughout my life with anxiety-related health issues. And so I really needed this. This was a moment where I did need to cast my anxieties onto God. That this would work out. That I could schedule this. That we could find a time to meet. And so we find a time to meet. And man, again, I'm praying on this. And we go in and we have this meeting, man. And this meeting was so important for me in my faith journey. This meeting was necessary for me. And this meeting was... I've noticed my prayer change throughout the last couple weeks. And so I was praying before the meeting. I was praying, God, I no longer want to pray just a laundry list or a to-do list. I want to pray for you to work within me. I want to trust in you that you'll give me what I need from this meeting. And we go in, and he asked me probing questions, and I gave him all that testimony I just told you about. So yeah, as I say, he asked me some good probing questions in my faith, and tell him about some health problems I've had recently and how I'd gotten content not going to church before I came back to Salt. How I've always called myself a Christian. And throughout that meeting, man, he convinced me to get baptized. For the first time since 1999, he convinced me to get baptized because in our conversation, it became ever so clear that the Lord had been working within me in that time period. And that I finally knew God, man. And I left that meeting, man, so inspired. I left that meeting so, man. And this day went on to be such an emotional day because it was a Wednesday. And so that night we had our church service. And I remember the last song we sang tonight was My Testimony. There's a verse and there's a line in that goes, "This is my testimony." And Lord, this is my testimony. Lord, I've seen you work within me, Lord. And I've seen you work within me in ways that I want to tell the people now. And so really quick, I want to go back to my friend Sal because this is so important to me. I told y'all I was a bracelet person, a wristband person. And I felt moved to get a wristband of my friend Sal because of how much he's meant to my faith journey and how he's gotten me to this testimony. And so I got somebody to make me a design, but I still don't know how to get this into an actual physical silicone wristband. So if anybody has an answer to that, I would love the help, man. And so it says Sal Espino Jr. on the day he went to be with the Lord. And fight for something was something that a catchphrase that he liked to say. And it has this verse, Ezekiel 37:3. It's a verse I don't really know, but it was the kind of thing where we were at the funeral and his family found this blog and they shared it with me. And I went back later to read it, and because I want his memory to be a blessing, I want to read that. I want to read that to you right now. Can these bones live again? Ezekiel 37:3 is one of my favorite verses from the Bible. According to the NIV, it says, "He asked me, 'Son of man, can these bones live?' I said, 'O sovereign God, you alone know.'" The first time I read that verse, I was in a transition in my life and was facing a lot of challenges, like nearly all of us do in our lives. Everyone has their cross to bear and their struggle to overcome. The adversary is always there to oppose you. The verse was so impactful because I used to have great doubts and still do sometimes in my ability to overcome the obstacles that the adversary has placed in front of me. At that time and place, I felt dead and rotten on the inside and out. I was looking to feel alive again and to rediscover that spark and that passion inside of me that made me tick, and that was a defining part of my character. So when Ezekiel was asked by God if these bones can live again, I wondered at that moment if I could live again, or if I was done in that, and if my bones and dreams were as dead as those bones. Ezekiel's response that only God can know was a moment of inspiration that spoke to my heart and said that God alone is the judge and he alone knows if I can live again. If despite all that troubled me in my life, if I could be resurrected from the death I faced, from the sickness and corruption that had destroyed me, he alone knows, because he alone is the one that gives us that grace. He alone is my strength when we are weak. He alone gives us light when it is dark. He alone gives us salvation because he alone, up on that cross, giving himself up as the perfect sacrifice and remedy to our original sin of pride. He alone can humble us enough to surrender to him. He alone raises us up when we fall, and it feels like we can never get back. Because He alone knows that I went to Him in prayer alone and still do night after night, asking Him to make these bones live again and again and again, so that I can find victory over death like He did on that day, so that He is no longer and we are no longer alone. We never have to be alone because He alone is always with us, so that we are never alone in our battle against the adversary. He guarantees victory to all who seek Him and believe Him, and He alone judges who has aimed for what is right and what is true. Most every night, He alone gives me the help and hope I need to move forward and make progress that is not always perfect, but is a step forward, and step by step, we will find what we're looking for. And what He calls us by name, by name in order to fulfill His purpose for our life. Pray, my brothers and sisters, that all who feel alone or are alone will realize that none who seek Him will ever be alone. And so, brothers and sisters, that is my prayer to you, that these bones can live again. Because I recognize that this isn't home. I'm just renting this place. I'm just renting this body and these bones, man. And my body is a temple, and I intend to respect that. But man, this sure ain't home, okay? And I recognize, and Sal is there right now, and that's what gives me comfort. Because tonight this is my prayer. This is my testimony. That when we do go home and when we are at those pearly gates of heaven, when St. Peter meets us there, and he asks us, do you know God? I don't want to sit there and hem and haw like I'm trying to get into some fraternity party. Who do you know here? I don't want to say, oh, I think I know God. I want to be there to proclaim that I know God. I want to proclaim that it is God who sent His Son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross so that He could deepen our relationship with Him. So that people like me who feel broken, for people like me who for so long who've thought that they know God, can one day actually realize that now they know God. I remember one time a professor graded me as present in name only because I didn't participate in class one day. And I feel like that's the perfect way to describe my faith up until this point. I've been present in name only in my Christian faith. I've called myself a Christian. I've thought I'd known God, but I haven't known God. And it is right now that I can say that I know God. So as I've prayed throughout this week, I remember Sunday night I prayed to God. I prayed because I thought I was going to record this Monday. I prayed to God that I hope that He would work within me that night. And I prayed on that verse in Job. I was like, give me the words, God, give me the words. And that next morning, I couldn't remember any of my dreams. And it was that night when I turned on K-Love. When I turned on radio, and it was K-Love that played, that I realized that. And I know to some of you might think, what a miracle by God that K-Love was playing when you turned on the radio, man. No, man. I mean, it is a miracle, but K-Love is playing in the same way in the same. Caleb's been playing as long as I've been in Minneapolis, and I don't even know any other radio stations in Minneapolis. But Caleb's been playing that long. It's been preset on my radio in my car. Playing that big for the same reason that I was praying and shocked that God didn't answer my prayers in that night. God did answer my prayers. The seed had been planted. And when Caleb is playing because the seed had been God was planting the seed. God was playing songs, man. I believe in my deepest heart that when we praise God in our voice and our song, man, that we are connecting with God, that we are there with God in those moments. And so I know that equally that the seed had been planted years ago. The seed was planted at Leadership Lab, at those Christian churches that I would go to, and I would be a little kid, and I would listen to the messages, but they wouldn't resonate. That when I was an acolyte, that the seed had been planted then, and that when I was leading a Bible study or just listening to a Bible study or told that I should be a minister and exploring a life in ministry before I thought I can't because I'm too broken. I'm too broken, man. No, the seed had been planted. And the seed had been planted for moments like this. And that the seed had been planted and these moments had watered the seed, man. And that just now I'm seeing the creation of God, man. I am seeing what it is like to live with God, man. And so now I can testify to you that I know God, that I trust God. I'm not passively walking through my faith like I had been for so long. These messages are clear to me now. God has always been there for me. He was there for me when I was depressed. He was there for me at all these pivotal moments in my life. He was the feeling I felt when I thought there was something greater for me out there. There was, and I would find that something greater at the University of Minnesota. I would find that something greater. I would begin to know God here at the University of Minnesota, man. And I would begin to trust God, and I would trust God, and I will trust God, because now I realize that for so long in my faith, for so long in my faith journey, I had gotten comfortable with God. I had gotten comfortable with God and Jesus Christ as my driving instructor, like I'm in driver's ed, man. I'd gotten comfortable with him telling me when to take turns and him having his little break so that whenever I'd run into an emergency, I need you, God. All of a sudden I come running to God. All of a sudden, just for a brief moment, and I never would stay in that moment. But now, Lord, now I am ready. I am ready. Jesus, take the wheel. I'll put that on a bumper sticker. I'll put that on these bones so that these bones can live again, Lord. I am ready and I cannot wait. I cannot wait to go home. And my prayer is that this resonates with you, that this message can help somebody who has been so lost in their faith, who hasn't noticed until now that they don't know God, that they can know God, that if God can put something as broken together as me in him and to love me, and that his grace could find me, and that God would know me, man. And so I would just like to close out real quick with a couple Christian songs that have meant so much to me, that I didn't even know until these messages are now clear what these songs meant. But now I know. Now I know the meaning of these songs. I just gotten comfort from these songs and respected these songs. And I know one of these had helped me so much when a family member, my great uncle John, who I was really close to, had passed away. This had meant something special to me then. And so I would not only like to I feel the need to close out with reading some of those two songs. So that one song that helped me so much and brought me comfort when my Uncle John passed away. It's a song by Josh Garrels, Born Again. And it's perfect now because now I am born again. The line there that really moved me recently is, Lord, took me a while, but my time has come. My time has come to be born again, to be born again. And the other song is by Sidewalk Prophet, super underrated. I Believe It Now. And I would just like to quickly, if I may, read that to you. I couldn't see it then, but I believe it now. Just a searching soul, tired of reaching out, stuck on the tracks, train bearing down, screaming from my lungs, who will save me now? As the reruns of the regrets that replay inside my head, got the devil on my shoulder and he's leaving me for dead. Whispers and lies have brought me here, flooding my veins with doubt and fear. Oh, I could not see it then. Oh, I could not see it. Oh my God, I remember when I cried, shook my fist up at the sky, wondered why you felt so far from me. Oh God, it was in my deepest pain that I heard you call my name. I heard you say that you were right there with me. I couldn't see it then, no, I couldn't see it then. I couldn't see it then, but I believe it now, trying to hold my head up when the ground fell out. I felt all alone, even in a crowd, like a sinking stone dragging my heart down, and the weight of the sorrow I carried on my chest. It kept pulling me under, and I couldn't catch my breath. Not how I thought my life would go. I didn't know my heart could sink this low. Oh, I could not see it then. No, I could not see it. Oh my God, I remember when I cried, shook my fist up at the sky. Wondered why you felt so far from me. Oh God, it was in my deepest pain that I heard you call my name. I heard you say that you were right there with me. Love was standing there holding me, but I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it. That love was always there. He carried me. Now I believe. Oh my God. I know you heard me when I cried. You saw my fist up at the sky. I realized that you have never left me. Oh God, it was in my deepest pain that I heard you call my name. I heard you say that you were right there with me. I couldn't see it then, but now I believe. I couldn't see it then, but now I believe. This is my testimony. Thank you.